Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. Mr. Pear here with your rundown of what we're doing today in class. First and foremost, make sure you're getting your bell ringer done. You should hopefully have your symbiotic videos all watched up and submitted at this point. Today, we're going to be looking at this concept called carrying capacity, which goes along with also limiting factors, which will be kind of how populations grow and how populations will decrease in a given area. Then you'll have a little bit of an assignment that goes along with that at the end. So in general, we're going to look at how populations grow and the different things that will affect that growth. So we're going to be doing some notes today, so go ahead and get those ready. You can pull this up on the, there'll be the slideshow up there ready for you to pull up. When you get on there, on Schoology, that's what I was trying to think of. I couldn't think of the word for Schoology, there it is, with it. So let's dive on in. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is things that affect population growth. So the things that affect population, there's kind of four categories that they can belong to. It can be when something dies, obviously the population goes down. If the animals or plants decide to leave that area, the population will go down. So the emigration stuff, which was talked about a little bit ago, but we'll bring it up again here. When the population enters the area, it goes up, and when more animals are born, it goes up. So there's two ways basically of how it can go down and two ways of how it can go up. It usually falls into one of those four categories, whether you're dying, leaving the area, entering the area, or being born. So the two ways, as we mentioned, of how a population increases is when you're born into the population or when new members enter the population. Likewise, when they decrease is usually when they die, usually from some kind of predation or other kind of thing, could be a natural disaster or something, or when they choose to leave the area and go somewhere else. Now, with the word that is used to describe when something enters the population versus when something exits the population, we got immigration and emigration. Immigration is when you go into the population. I like to think I with I, immigration into, and while emigration is you're exiting. So E with E, Emma, exit, whereas Emma, into, to it. So how does this stuff all affect a population? Why do we care about some of this stuff here? Is that we can start to look at what is called population density, which we determine how many organisms are in a given area, which is important because if they outgrow their space, we're going to have some problems to deal with. So we need to make sure that there's the right amount of plants or animals per the given space and they're not overgrowing their current area. Because then that could lead to big things happening. It's called usually a boom or bust, where they get so high that they basically eliminate themselves because they, like, for example, if there's a whole bunch of deer, they will eat up all the grass if there's not anything to take care of the deer population. And if there's no grass, there's no food for any of the other animals, so all of the animals will end up suffering because this one population grew out of control. Population density is just making sure of keeping track of how many organisms are in that area. I don't know why the font's all weird with it. It's not weird on the actual thing. But the two terms that kind of go along with that is what's called carrying capacity, which is how many organisms can live and survive, particularly in that area. So every area has so many animals that it could support, theoretically. And when the number is below that, it usually means that populations can increase. When things are above it, usually that means there's going to be problems and things that are going to die. So there's a limit to how many animals can be in the forest, for example, before it becomes overpopulated, whatever that number ends up being. The things that determine how many organisms can live in that area is what we call a limiting factor, which is a certain amount of something that the organisms need in order to survive at that numbers. And we say something because there's a lot of different things that qualify as a limiting factor, which is food is one of the number one limiting factors. If there's not enough food to go around, things starve. Things like water. If there's not enough water, things die of thirst or dehydration. There's not enough space, which means they don't have homes. And if they don't have homes, they don't have a place to sleep at night, which can be, everything needs to sleep. It gets overcrowded real easily. There's not enough homes for all the animals. And different things like weather or even diseases can be a limiting factor because it will cause the population to decrease. Now, these are more random events with the weather and diseases. They're not as predictable because all of a sudden, boom, a tornado can hit and wipe out the forest there. That's going to be bad for all the animals equally across the board. It has nothing to do with their ability to survive and what traits that they have, really, because it's a natural disaster. Your traits aren't necessarily going to help you out in that situation. So there's those types of limiting factors. And that's kind of our notes today. It's kind of short and sweet as far as our notes go. Our homework assignment is going to go through some of those bits and pieces for us here. So let's go to our folder here. Go to Wednesday. We've got what is called the Kaibab Deer Worksheet. So we're going to focus on an actual area that has deer in it in the United States that specifically deal with this problem of the carrying capacity and the limiting factors here. So what you'll need to do with our activity here is at the beginning there's the story that goes along with the Kaibab deer and how they have to do things. The Kaibab region is a region by the Grand Canyon. You might remember us talking about the squirrels on the different Grand Canyon during natural selection. It is the same area in the world, except we're focusing on the deer in that area because there's this very specific story that goes along with it. So you'll read through the story there. It'll be important for the questions later. What you're going to need to do first and foremost is that you are going to create a graph for the deer population over the course of like 30 to 40 years. So we give you the data down below here, the years and how much the deer population was for each one of those years. You're going to need to create a graph of that. If you want to use the online graph maker, you got a link to it here. Otherwise, you are going to, I would just draw it on paper. When you're drawing it, you're going to put the time on the X, which is the horizontal, the one that goes left and right. You can probably go by like every 5 years or so for that. On the Y-axis, you're going to have your number of deer. That one's probably going to be a little bit higher because we're dealing with the thousands and hundreds of thousands. So probably going by 5,000 or 10,000 will be what you would need to go with for the one that goes up and down. But you're going to use all this information. So we got the first 7 over here, and then the second 7 over here. There's 14 plots that you're going to need to make. You're going to then, whatever you do, if you do it online, you need to take a screenshot and add the graph there. Or if you're doing it by hand, you need to put a picture of your graph into the section. And then there's there's 8 questions to answer at the end that deals with referencing stuff from the graph and referencing the story from up above to it. It all has to deal with our whole idea of carrying capacity and limiting factors. So with that being said, that's your assignment. You can turn it in when you're done. If you have any questions, email me. Otherwise, that is it for Wednesday, April 28th. If you do have any questions, do not hesitate to email me. Hope you're doing well, staying safe out there. And hopefully we'll see you back here before the end of the week. If not, I hope you're with us as soon as possible. But I will see you later. Bye.